Do you plan on doing a video with what applications you use? Also, what are your computer specs? Um, as far as applications go, yeah, I should probably do a video on that. I might make a little bit like how-to videos here and there about like how to make a multi-boot USB stick so that you can have multiple operating system installers in the same USB. Little things like that might be good to make videos on, like how to scan networks and pick up Ethernet packets flying around with Wireshark might be good too. So a video like that might be good, yeah. But as far as computer specs go, I got my laptop and desktop specs. My desktop, I'll just use my desktop. It's got an i7 3820, that's a 3.6 gigahertz i7 from a few years ago. 16 gigs of DDR3, 1600 quad channel memory. It's got a 240 gig SSD right now. That's not a Samsung 850 Evo. It's a Crucial 600 series or something. I can't quite remember. I'm sorry. Two 1 terabyte hard drives in RAID 0, and two GTX 783 gigabyte graphics cards. I'll probably just post the full specs like right here or something. Next question. Advice for making money by selling PCs, hardware, and techie stuff. The first thing I'd like to go over is where you get it. Obviously, as a lot of you know who watch my videos, recycling centers are pretty great for electronics. A lot of them aren't like recycling centers, they're just basically dumps with recycling containers, right? So it's good to get stuff that people throw away like that, because people do throw away good stuff. Also, yard sales are a good place. People will sell their old machines that they really don't know what it's worth, but they just sell it for a few bucks just to get rid of it, like a lot of computer peripherals and things like that especially. But as far as the actual selling part goes, what you want to do is you want to make sure that something works 100% as much as possible before you sell it. And if there's any defects whatsoever, make that very clear in the eBay listing for doing eBay, for example. And make sure you do your testing, because I've sold computers before where something would be wrong and I would think I'd solved the problem and I'd sell it, and then the customer would have that same problem and they'd have to return it. And obviously, you lose money when you're selling stuff online, and you have to do a refund because you refund the original shipping price. So if it costs $20 to ship, and somebody does a refund, you lose $20 and a bunch of your time. So just make sure your testing's fully and that everything is working as much as you can possibly assure, so that the customer doesn't have any issues. What languages do you know? And by the way, what's your thoughts on AMD Zen? So as far as programming languages go, I have a decent amount of C++ knowledge. Took a class in it last year. It was a kind of like a terminal-based application for librarians. We did a lot of other stuff in the class, but this was the big project for the final. And what that featured was user authentication, where you would log in to it, and there would be a database. It was really just text files full of information like books that are available and things like that the program would actually parse through and read. You'd be able to remove entries and add entries and do things like that. A lot of text management. So I have a functional amount of C++ knowledge. I know a little bit of Python. I took a class now almost a couple years ago, but I really don't use it much because I'm not really a huge fan of Python. I like to use other languages instead. So that's kind of like a little bit hazy, but it's there, I guess. I took PHP last semester. I got a little bit out of it. I understand the concept of what it's used for, and I can sit down and I can do a little bit of PHP for like HTML forms and things like that. I'm not an expert, but I can do basic level stuff, so I guess you could say I know some PHP. And I'm also pretty comfortable with doing CSS and HTML by hand. And as far as AMD Zen goes, I looked it up the other day, and AMD is finally getting something called multi-threading, where you have multiple logical threads inside a physical core that works side by side with the same resources. And Intel's version of that is called hyperthreading, and they've had it for about 13 years maybe, roughly, give or take. So it's good to see that AMD's finally kind of, catching up a little bit, maybe in that regard. But I'm sure the CPU is a fine CPU. That's just the first thing I really noticed about it. Okay, they have multi-threading now. I'm sure it's a decent CPU series. I don't know everything about it, but it's AMD, and I honestly just generally don't really go for AMD. But I'm sure it will give you a better bang for your buck than the average Intel CPU. So what is your PC building horror story? Love your vids, by the way. Thank you very much, Legend Rob TV. PC building horror story. Most of my PC builds have gone pretty great. like when I build a PC for myself or for a friend, it's gone pretty smoothly because it's kind of a straightforward process once you get used to it. But when I was building my 2009 PC, um, I would love to turn the thing on for basically no reason, just to look at the lights. Like before I even had a CPU or memory or anything for it, I would just turn it on to like look at it being on. Silly, I know, but I would do that. And I think it must have been when I was doing that, I plugged in like the rear fan to the motherboard, but I plugged it in wrong. So there's 3 pins. A lot of modern fans have 4 pins, but there's 3 pins in this one. And obviously it's supposed to go 3 pin to 3 pin, but I plugged it in like this, so that, I don't know, positive was to negative and negative was to ground. It was just basically like 2 of the pins are plugged in, and when I hit the power button, like I heard this popping sound and the computer like turned off, and there was smoke coming out of the PC.
Oh shit.
And I opened it up, and the cable for the fan literally blew into pieces. Like one of the little wires had just exploded into 2 pieces. So that was interesting. The fan wasn't the greatest anyway. I was gonna probably replace it with an LED fan anyways. It wasn't that big of a deal, but that was kind of funny. But as far as like other actual like pad building horror stories, I don't really have anything. That's pretty much the extent of things going very bad when building something. Could you share what you would consider to be your most interesting repair story to date? I've done a few repairs for people. I've always done more like selling computers online and repairing. And as far as like, repairing computers for other people goes, really nothing more interesting than, oh, this computer's full of dust, or oh, there's a lot of just junk in the recycle bin, boring stuff like that. But I have pulled machines out of recycling places, and you find interesting things in them. There was one time a few years back where my brother and I got a PC, and I opened it up, and there was a nest of baby mice in it. Like, you're hearing squeaks in the entire, 9 yards from the PC. You're like, what is going on? And there's, a nest of very young mice in it. That was just bizarre and interesting. We picked them up and we put them outside and hoped for the best, because there's really not much more I can do for them. It's kind of sad, but yeah, that was a surprise. How did I start my eBay business? I've kind of gone over this in this video, or at least probably part 1. So, I would get computers from the local dump, pretty much, the recycling center. When we were actually doing this back a few years back, I didn't like to talk about this because I didn't want get in trouble or something. Cause I wasn't doing anything illegal. I was allowed to do this, but there was a lot of red tape kind of with the town and everything, potentially. But now that it's a few years out, I'm not doing it anymore. I really don't care about talking about it. So, we would pull stuff out of there, and for a year or two, my brother and I were pretty much just taking the PCs and repairing them. We weren't really doing much with them. We're just kind of stockpiling them up, all ready to go and to sell. And it took me not a few years really, but a while to figure out eBay, because for some reason it was confusing to me. So as soon as I figured that out, I just basically started putting those PCs up and selling them. I think the most difficult logistical thing was getting the right size boxes and figuring out the packagings. At first I was buying giant things of packing peanuts, but when you're selling $40 computers on eBay, it's not really worth it to do that. So I eventually just settled for newspaper, which works actually quite beautifully. So I just buy boxes and toss the PC in it that works perfectly, and use a bunch of newspaper to package it up and sell it on eBay, and that's how I did that. Any advice on how to start making money as a teenager using your computer skills, not anything super smart? Thanks in advance, Vasilis. I probably completely destroyed your name, I'm sorry. But as far as just making money using your computer skills go, I think what helps is knowing people, because your neighbors and friends and family, if they need help with something, usually they don't know what to do themselves. If their computer's broken, their options are pretty much to take it to the Geek Squad or to buy a new PC. And if you know how to fix them, they will pay you pretty good money to do it. And I'm not saying that you should ask your family to pay you if you're going to fix, your mom's PC or anything, but just knowing the right people. The more people you know, the more potential business there is. So just try to get yourself out there a little bit and, advocate for your skills so that people will go to you when they need something. And that's pretty much what there is as far as repairing stuff goes. I think the idea of building PCs for people trying to make money is kind of interesting, but that doesn't really make you a whole lot because I found it to be very, very difficult to actually find people to do PC builds for. Because most people who want their own custom built gaming PC are just going to do it themselves, and those who don't are just going to buy one. So I would say just try to get your name out there, try to get people who need repairs to know that you do repairs, and just do a good job and be professional. What has been the biggest challenge you have run into in the cybersecurity field and classes? Well, to be honest, I'm not in the cybersecurity field yet, like the actual field. I haven't had any jobs that are actually directly in cybersecurity because there's really no cybersecurity internships. And I would say that's probably the biggest challenge is trying to find cybersecurity internships and jobs because, think about it, if a company needs somebody to work with them in cybersecurity, they're not going to hire an intern. They want somebody who knows what they're doing, they can hire full-time and have there for a long time because it needs to be somebody they can trust. They're not just going to take some random kid from school after looking at their resume and hire them for 2 months over the summer to do cybersecurity stuff. Because there's a lot of really, really confidential stuff usually in the hands of whoever does cybersecurity, and they're not going to hire interns. That's probably the biggest challenge is trying to get cybersecurity experience in the actual field by the time you graduate. So I think what you have to do there is you pretty much just have to figure things out on your own. Take your classes, do your reading, and things like that, and just get good at it. The next challenge would probably be just the amount of time it takes to get good at it, because nobody becomes an expert cybersecurity guy or girl by just, getting good overnight. It's something where there's a lot of knowledge that you need to go under the cybersecurity. You need to know how networking works, you need to know how software and hardware works, and just the amount of time to do that is something you have to have dedication to. What is my favorite computer company? As far as component manufacturers go, I like Intel and NVIDIA the most. Their stuff is a little bit more pricey than AMD, of course, as I've said before, but I just like the extra quality. Well, I'm just familiar with it and I like it. As far as the component manufacturers go, I mean, like MSI and Gigabyte do good jobs too, but I'm a big Intel and NVIDIA guy. But as far as companies that sell entire desktop units or laptop units, I really don't know. I don't have a solid answer for you. I'm not going to jump to anything. I mean, at work, we buy Dell machines to resell to customers and for internal use as well, and they do a good job. Dell's Pro support is pretty solid. It's not perfect because no support is solid, like perfectly solid, but they do a good job with that. Their PCs are designed pretty nicely. They're a little bit proprietary, but they're pretty good. So I'd probably lean towards Dell, but I haven't really had a whole lot of desktop experience with HP machines in the last 5 years. Almost all the computers I've worked with have been between the years of 2002 and 2007 or 8. Within that time range, I'd say Dells are probably by far the best designed, but as far as modern times go, I'm really not sure. A point that I would like to make that's a little bit tangential is that laptop companies, laptops suck. Buying a laptop is always a nightmare. I've always found that Toshiba laptops really aren't the best. They really love breaking, as a particular someone right near me knows very nicely. I bought a Lenovo a few years back, and the motherboard died to that, thankfully, in warranty. Laptops just break left and right. I think if I were to buy a new gaming laptop, I'd probably try an MSI or something. But as far as laptops goes, almost all the computer manufacturers, they just never really seem to do that good of a job. But what can you expect? They get tossed around, they get dropped, they get opened and closed and moved around all day. So yeah. Last question. I'm sorry if any of you have posted questions more recently to this. But what is up with your iMac G4? Do you still have it? No, I don't. I think my brother must have made a video a few years back on repairing an iMac G4. I think they were G5s actually. I'm actually not sure. I don't have any picture that pops into my head when I think G4, to be brutally honest. But all the iMac G5s we've either sold or thrown away because they're broken. And any other PCs from that era, we don't have. I mean, the only computer technology I have right now is stuff that's new that I'm actually using. So If I've ever had a G4, which I can't remember, I don't still have it. Okay, so that does it for this video. Sorry if any of you have posted questions I didn't see because that was the most recent one. If this video is received well, I'll probably do one a few months from now or something. If not, hey, I tried. You know, not everything I do is received well, unfortunately. So, as always, thank each and every one of you for watching, and thank you for posting your comments, and hopefully I'll do this again in the future.